The system was designed to push the boys to breaking point. Only this way could the regime identify the very strongest.
You had to test yourself. If I didn't want to do something, I'd ask myself, do we always have to stand up straight, and so on? Yes, you do. It's your duty to your school, your Führer, and your people.
Hey! Hier!
When the time finally came for troops to fight, boys still at school were afraid they might miss the action.
After France in 1940, our teacher said, the war will be over before your final exams. We all thought, what a nightmare.
We thought, God, they're lucky, they've made it. And we somehow felt that our turn would come too.
The schools promoted an idealized version of war. Old boys returning from the front gave talks, which they'd embellish with tales of personal heroism.
Es gab ein furchtbares Panzergefecht zwischen deutschen Panzern und Russenpanzern. Die Granaten zischten über meinen Kopf hinweg, von rückwärts und vorwärts. Entgegengaben triften über meinen Kopf. Jetzt ließ das Feuer wieder einstellen, griff zum Karabiner, denn jetzt wurden mir die russischen Infanteristen wieder von hinten gefährlich. Die stürmten zurück und ich legte an. Jetzt hieß es nun nur noch sicheres Auge und starke Hand, ruhig Blut und fester Stand. Ich legte an und habe nun die Russen, die auf mein Loch von hinten drauf zukamen, umgelegt.
Dann haben wir die immer bewundert, was das für Helden sind.
We wondered what it was like to be a hero, but thought we'd probably miss out on the war. They said, don't be sad, young comrades. We won't be dragging the war out until you're old enough. But after our final victory, there'll still be plenty to do.
Aber es gibt auch danach noch genug zu tun.
Hölderlin, Hyperion.
In Hölderlin's poem Hyperion, it says, messengers of victory descend, the battle is ours, don't count the dead, not one was lost in vain. That's how they talk. Of course, no one mentioned being shot in the stomach and dying a miserable death.
As German casualties mounted, more and more of the elite schoolboys saw action. In March 1944, the head of the Napola schools reported to Himmler.
The next generation of young leaders has now proved itself against the enemy. 4 are wearing the Knight's Cross with oak leaves, 33 the Knight's Cross, 96 the Gold German Cross, and 1,226 were killed or missing in action.
Am Anfang waren wir stolz. Am Anfang.
At the beginning, we were proud to give our lives for Germany. That's how we saw it.
So dachten wir damals.
Then we were distressed because younger men who had been our older comrades at school were dying.
Jüngere, die wir noch als Gruppenführer oder überhaupt als ältere Kameraden in der
And it wasn't just our comrades who were dying. It was our fathers too.
Kameraden, es fielen auch unsere Väter.
In spring 1945, reinforcements were urgently needed when Berlin came under attack. Most of the senior boys from the Potsdam Napola school were drafted to the front. Their commander was August Heissmeyer, head of the Napola schools. He rallied them with stirring words.
The Führer
is in Berlin. You must be loyal to him. Wenck's army is on its way. In 24, or at the most 48 hours, we'll turn destiny around.
Heissmeyer fled Berlin shortly afterwards, leaving the boys to face a ferocious Red Army assault.
I begged my comrades to take me with them. I couldn't keep going. I was wounded and it was everyone for himself. I said to one boy, "I have a compass. Show me." I showed him. "Give it to me," he said. I said, "No, let me come with you, it's mine." "Give it to me, or," he said, with his gun in his hand.
Towards the end of the war, a group of Adolf Hitler schoolboys joined the Werewolves, an undercover movement dedicated to sabotage deep behind enemy lines.
Hier spricht der Sender Werwolf, der Sender der deutschen Freiheitsbewegung in den
The movement had its own radio station to broadcast its successes to the nation. In February 1945, 2 Adolf Hitler schoolboys, both undercover werewolves, were caught spying on American troop movements. They were found guilty of espionage and handed the maximum sentence, death by firing squad. They were 16 and 17.
Up to the end of the war, I was learning to die for my fatherland, but I didn't learn to live for it. Our thinking was, you're nothing, your people are everything. Germany must live, even if we must die. Germany, you will shine, even if we die.
Many of the elite schoolboys ended up in prisoner of war camps, but they still dreamed that Germany would triumph.
Ich war schon in Gefangenschaft. Ein strahlender Maitag.
I was a prisoner of war. It was a beautiful day in May, with a slight breeze in a steel blue summer sky. A kind of air wave came along. I don't know what it was, but in my disappointment on the one hand, and gullibility on the other, I thought it was the last ridge of a pressure wave from a miracle weapon. The air had to come from somewhere.
Irgendwo muss ja dieser Windzug herkommen.
Eigentlich war das nicht richtig, wie die zusammenbrach. Also so von uns.
From our point of view, the end was all wrong. It just wasn't the way things should have been done. There was no announcement and no Heil Hitler. There was no last roll call like the one we'd read about in the Spanish Civil War. It was simply, boys, the war's over, go home.
Geht heim. Geht nach Hause.
It was only later that the boys began to realize what their education had been for.
All those things they'd done to us had a specific aim. And that aim, it becomes clearer to me every year, was a hero's death.
Hitler's elite school system had achieved its goal in molding a generation of boys who fought with a blind allegiance to their Führer and an absolute belief in his cause. Many are still bitter about what they were taught.
Betrogen und missbraucht wurden vor allen Dingen die, die es nicht überlebt haben.
The cheated and exploited ones are those who didn't survive. That was about half of us. But anyone who did survive should admit his own stupidity and try to do better with his children and grandchildren.
Enkeln besser zu machen.